Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the AUD podcast channel. I'm your host, Khaled Abdul-Jubain. We are honored to have Mr. Alexander Van Treat as our guest on the show today. Alexander has over 30 years of experience in operations, sales, marketing, strategic consulting, and general management. He was also the CEO of My Dubai, the fastest growing bottled water company in the GCC for 7 years. As the CEO of the company, he spearheaded growth, doubling revenue during his tenure by launching new and premium products and driving customer penetration by advocating a social and environmental agenda. In this episode, you'll learn why are plastics good, how can companies benefit from being more environmentally conscious, where does technology and AI fit into environmental sustainability, and lastly, we discuss COP28 and Dubai's 2050 vision. Please join me in welcoming to the show Mr. Alexander Van Treat.
Thank you, Khalid. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. So, Alexander, given COP happening right now, and I feel especially over the last year or two, there's a massive push to sustainability in all forms. Economic, environmental, social. Everyone's trying to find a way. How do we future-proof ourselves for the long term, and how can we build a world that not only we can enjoy, like myself and you, but our kids and our grandkids and so on. So, given your experience, I know you were the ex-CEO of My Dubai, and you guys, doing my research, I noticed you guys really did a lot of great initiatives that are harnessing, renewable energy, automation, trying to make it as a smooth, clean process. And given your understanding of where we are right now, where we are in the world, I think, there's a lot of value you could teach us about and provide to the audience. But before we get into all of that, Alexander, Why don't you give all of us a little bit of background about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
All right, good. Well, thank you, Khalid, first of all, to invite me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here and talk a little bit about my background and my experiences in this domain of the environmental domain. So my background, I'm Dutch national from background, left Holland when I was very young, around 13, traveled all over the world, and had the fortune of working in different industries, anywhere from industrial gases to the plastics industry, going into the printing industry, worked for a company that did labels for the large brands around the world. At one point in time, my division had about 22 factories worldwide, so I traveled all over the place at that opportunity. And then after a year of world travel with my family, I settled here in Dubai. And that's about 8-9 years ago. So that's awesome. How I got here.
Okay, well, welcome. A question before we get into everything. Did you think when you moved to Dubai that you would be here for as long as you have? Because I've spoken to so many people that would tell me, I was planning to come here for a year or two, and then I was going to go back home, and then me sitting down talking to them, they've been here for like now 10, 15 to 20 years.
Well, it's a good question. One of the things that I've learned over time, and I think I've lived in more than 8-9 countries now.
Wow, okay.
What we always say at home is that we stay somewhere until it's no fun anymore, or there is something more fun. One thing that I've learned is if the people say, I'm going to be here for 2 years, they end up to be there for 10 years. And when they say, I'll go there for 10 years, after 6 months, they're gone again. So we just came here a bit unique, I think. Most people come here with a job. We did not. We came with 2 kids, 5 suitcases, and checked into a hotel. and I started a small little consulting company. And out of that, actually, I ended up doing some work for My Dubai, and that's how I rolled into that role.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So was it by design? It wasn't really by design. We said at the time, we'll try it for a year, 2 years. If we like it, we stay. And if not, then we'll seek something else.
Yeah. And I love that, ethos that you kind of go by, that if it's fun, we'll stay. If it's not, all right, there's probably there's a whole big world out there, and you've lived in 8 or 9 countries. So I'm sure you've had some incredible experience, different time frames, different parts of your life. And like you said, a lot of people typically do come here with jobs, but you came here, started your own thing, and it led to, working at My Dubai and so on. So today we want to focus on sustainability.
Okay.
And I've actually I've had I was really excited to speak to you because I have my own podcast, and I've spoken to a water waste management expert quite recently, a few months ago. So that was a very eye-opening experience. I didn't know there were different types of water. I didn't know that water could be so clean that it could kill you. I had this, so this was just a mind-blowing experience for me. It was so interesting. And we talked about sustainability, and we talked about how there's a big awareness now towards it in all aspects, specifically environmentally focused. And now you see, this is where I'm a bit cynical or a bit skeptical, so I wanted to get your thoughts. Now, over the last year, all the brands, all the companies, especially with COP being here, everyone's talking about sustainability, they have these initiatives going on and so on. My thing is that you're doing that because consumers now are looking for brands that are more, environmentally conscious. There's demand for stuff like that. So my question to you is, do you think companies would still care or show that they're caring about sustainability to the level they are now if the consumers didn't want that?
My short answer to that one is yes.
Okay, interesting. Okay, I wouldn't have expected that. All right.
My short answer to that is yes. And there is a challenge for many companies that they need to balance an economic element,
yes,
and let's say an environmental element and a social element, and these three they need to optimize, and it's a question of finding a balance. But I sometimes parallel it to some of the other waves that we've seen in the past. In the past, there was a wave about safety. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot about debate. Can you invest that much in safety? We're going over the top, or quality. And by now, safety and quality are taken for granted because people realized after a while, if you operate very safely, it will save you money, actually. If you work with good quality and you reduce the rejection rate, it will save you money. Mm-hmm. Now, it's an upfront investment, there's no doubt about it. And I think what we find in many of the environmental elements, it actually helps companies.
Helps them.
I'm not saying that there's not some what do you call it nowadays? Greenwashing, green spinning, green lightning, green you name it, going on. Yeah. But there is a fundamental underlying current, I think, which means that doing the sustainable thing actually is good for companies. And I do have a little bit of a beef, and I go counter-stream a little bit sometimes, because I believe right now that there's an overflow on attacks on plastics, for instance, which I don't think is correct.
Okay.
But fundamentally, companies, in the majority of the cases, they actually benefit from taking an environmental mindset.
Okay. Could you give us just some examples of how they are benefiting? Is it just purely from, is it just purely a cost perspective? Does it amplify their brand? Because I agree with you that there's definitely, I like the way you said it, there definitely is an underlying current, I think globally, towards sustainability and towards, being more environmentally conscious. But could you give us some examples, maybe from your experience, that by taking an environmentally conscious approach, how did that help, your company, for example?
Okay. So if you take one of the most basic elements, is if you reduce waste, that's good for the environment because you're going to be using less materials, less stuff. So even in my days as the CEO, in 4 years, on our bottles, our plastic bottles, what you say, you downgrade or you optimize the design of these bottles. So we were able, with our suppliers, to find a way that we actually reduced the weight, the plastic weight used, by about between 15 and 18% overall.
So you're reducing the waste of the plastic?
So we used less plastic to make the same bottle.
Okay.
But we redesigned it slightly, which the consumer didn't see. Just by adding a ring or adding something structural in the design that made the bottle stronger, but with the use of less plastic.
Interesting.
So that's an environment where actually you reduce waste, you use less products. That's good for the environment, and at the same time, for the company, you have downgauged, or if you re-engineered, and you've saved money. So it's a very simple example of where the environmental approach or the environmental looks helps you make it better.
Interesting. So I like you said a very key word there, and I think that's something we need to remember, which is waste. I think I learned from my previous conversation that there's a lot of, for example, water that is used and not recycled or not reusable, and and now we're moving into, there's a global water crisis that is kind of creeping up, and that's going to be the next big thing I think that everyone's going to be looking at. So bringing it back to one of the initiatives you guys had while you were working at My Dubai was you said you collected 40% collection of those those big 16-liter bottles that you get in the house, and you said something that it reminds consumers that the plastic bottles are not garbage but could be a very valuable resource. And you recently gave a talk actually here at the university about why plastics are good. Now. You kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, that you're kind of going against what everyone is saying right now, that plastic is bad and it has to be biodegradable and so on. But I think there's still, like you said, there still is a space for plastics. So could you tell us, in your words, why are plastics good?
Okay, so there was actually 4 or 5 concepts you introduced, Khalid, at the same time. Let me try to break them down in a couple.
Sure.
Let me first of all start with the example of the 16-liter bottle. We have a lot of offices, universities alike. They buy they're actually the 5-gallon, the big hard bottles that you put on your coolers, right?
Okay, yeah.
Those bottles, all of them go back to factories. They get cleaned, washed, checked, and they get refilled. So that's a fantastic way of supplying water to people, because it's a bottle that, like the old milk bottle in the UK, it gets collected, gets cleaned, gets refilled, and comes back to you. So that's one. Now, what we introduced as well is a 16-liter. It's slightly smaller, but it was a PET bottle, just a regular plastic bottle, but slightly smaller, because some people didn't want the hard plastic big thing that went around. But when you talk about products, they sometimes say there's 4 moments of truth in consumer marketing. The 4 moments of truth are, if I see it on the shelf, do I like it and do I pick it up?
Like visually?
Visually.
Yeah.
Then the second part is, when I have it in my home, can I open up the package? Is it easy to open up? We've all had these packages where you end up just finally using your teeth because you can't open it up.
Very true.
So that's the second moment of the truth. The third moment of truth is when you actually consume the product. You eat it, you taste it, you put it on your body, whatever it is, and you either like it or you don't like it. But there's a fourth moment of truth, and that is the moment of truth when you discard it, when you're done with it. Yeah. If you think about these 16-liter bottles, if you would have to put those in your trash can, that becomes a problem for the consumer. Where you're going to go, even with the 1.5 liter, and I always tell people,
they're pretty big.
Crunch it up and close it up, and then put it in there in the trash. But so what we did, we said to people, if you take these particular bottles, we'll take it back. We're happy to take it back for you, because we deliver a new one anyway. So the guys are there,
just pick it up.
We'll exchange it, and we'll use that. So that is one of the things that we did, and that we used, and we worked with companies in the UAE that actually want that plastic, because they will recycle it. And when I was here at American University in Dubai the other time, we actually had people from D-Grade, a company, that what they do is they take the plastic, it's not waste, but they use it as resource to use plastic. They flake it, then it becomes fluffed, and it becomes yarn.
And they make clothes out of it,
and
right?
they make clothes out of it.
Yeah.
Basically, a T-shirt is three bottles, more or less. So there is a use for it.
Yeah.
So sorry, that was the first part of your question. I think the second part you said about counterstream a little bit.
My question, for example, the initiative that you just were talking about, that you can, that you guys were taking it back, so there's no waste on the consumer side and so on. But you mentioned something that, okay, you take it, we'll give you the bottle, you don't have to do anything, we'll pick it up, we'll clean it, and we'll reuse it. Now, the question I have for you is, if the cost of doing that was greater than the production of making a new plastic bottle, would you still do that?
I think so. I would.
Okay.
I would. Now, I'm talking personally here. I'm not.
Of course.
Representing anyone.
Because I'm just trying to balance it out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also want to make sure that right from the start, I do not currently work for the plastics industry. But I also do not sign up for those people that scream loudest, because when people talk about plastic, very often you see these images about plastic in nature, in the oceans, and people, plastic is bad for you. Well, the first thing I would say, when you say plastics, that's the same thing as saying, I don't like fruit. there's bananas, there's oranges, there's kiwis, right? Plastic, there's many different types of plastics.
Okay.
Typically, the plastics we're talking about is polyethylene, polypropylene, and PET.
Yeah.
That's where the bottles are made of, the labels are made for. That's the big volume. Those are perfectly recyclable.
Okay.
Okay, they are perfectly recyclable, and in many places that already happens. And one of the things that we need to take a look at is that if you say, I don't want this plastic, this is one of my pet subjects, is ask the people, what is my next best alternative?
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
So if I say a bottle of plastic, a water in plastic, what will be the alternative?
Instead of for water, a glass.
Yeah, that's one of the alternatives, right? Now, if I would take a glass bottle, for instance, and I take a plastic bottle, if I empty them out, which one is heavier?
The glass.
Glass, good. Absolutely right, by the way. Now, if you think about the glass weight of that bottle, if we would replace on our trucks the water in plastic in glass, the basic fact is that glass is about 10 times as heavy as the plastic. For the same amount of weight, transport, I need that glass. Picture that in your mind. One of the biggest challenges of a truck leaving the factory in the morning, they're full with water.
Yes.
And there's only a certain weight limit that a truck can be.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Now, if we would replace the water with glass, we need to have many more trucks.
Yes.
Right? Now, if the plastic to glass ratio is about 1 to 10, it's not, it's about like that.
Yeah.
But that means that instead of maybe having 300 trucks, in a factor of 10, I need
like about
3,000 trucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the same
Let's say
amount of
that's half of that. But if you need to add 1,000 trucks more, and they use fuel and brake pads and all that stuff, so you need to take a look when you replace something. You need to take a look at what's the next best alternative, and that's very often, sometimes nowadays, misconstrued.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we're trying to address as well. I a bit contentious nowadays, but there's this entire push about replacing plastic bags, for instance. Right?
Yes, and you get those paper
environmentally,
bags
Khalid, is painful to say, but environmentally, that's the wrong choice. And I know I'm going counterstream.
That's very interesting. Okay, I wasn't expecting you to say that.
Yeah, because I'll ask the same question.
Sure.
What is the alternative to a plastic bag?
A paper bag.
Paper bag. So let's stick with that one. If you take a look at a paper bag, a paper bag, if you would take a plastic bag and a paper bag and you hold them up and you drop them, which one's going to be closest first to the ground?
The paper bag.
Absolutely, it's much heavier, right?
Yes.
You need about 6 times as much weight to get the same strength as plastic, probably even more. But paper, when you make paper, I don't know if you've ever been in a paper mill, that's fantastic if you have the opportunity, Khaled, you should do it.
Okay.
But a paper mill, they start with slush, brown mud basically, and it goes over rollers, it gets in the flat, and then it gets dried out, and you need to get the water out in order to get the paper. Well, in order to make paper, you need an enormous amount of energy and heat to get the water off. So there's been over 30 LCA, life cycle analysis studies done. And every single one, bar none, gives the answer, plastic bags are better than paper bags for the environment. If you don't believe me, there's a McKinsey report, the consultant
of
McKinsey,
course,
Plastic and the Economy, and they say, in the far majority of the cases, plastic is better than the alternative. But people run against this plastic thing, and it doesn't make sense. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want plastic in nature, I don't want it in the ocean, stuff like that. But plastic itself is not the issue. Human behavior is. If you throw a glass bottle in the ocean and you come back 100 years later, have a guess what you're going to find on the bottom of the ocean?
Yeah.
A glass bottle. We'll find them in pirate ships nowadays, right? So don't blame the glass, blame the person. Yeah. So I think on my pet subject now is to wake people up to actually plastic is good for you if you deal with it correctly. So if you recycle, in case you can reuse. Yeah? And there's amazing opportunities there.
Yeah, that's so interesting, Alexander, to hear, because kind of like what you said, I think myself included, and I think the general population would have the perspective that you are going against, that plastic is bad, you want it to be paper, you want it to be more reusable, and so on. But this is the thing, So I consider myself just the general public. So we're only getting that high level information, that marketing, that message. So that's what, we start to believe. But with your experience, for example, when you go a level deeper and really analyze, looking at the studies, looking at all of that, and looking at, I love the example you used about the energy consumption that you need to produce that paper compared to the energy you might need to use that plastic bag. So it seems like all our attention has been kind of diverted to focus on one thing instead of looking at what it has been working best for us so far, and how do we make this product, so a plastic bag, for example, reusable, recyclable, and so on. That have I understood kind of what you're saying?
You're spot on. You're spot on. It is what I ask people to do is consider the next best alternative, and if the next best alternative is better, switch. Let me give you one other simple example. The CEO of Coca-Cola, John Quincy, at a presentation, he says, of course he wants you to drink that particular product.
Absolutely.
But by the way, I'll also make the commercial for Pepsi. By the way, they have the same story. I just happen to know this guy's and his quote, what he did.
Sure.
And what he said, he wants you to drink his product. He wants you to drink that cola. You can buy it in 3 formats. You can buy it in a can, you can buy it in a glass bottle, or you can buy it in plastics. And his answer in public says, if you want to be good for the environment, please buy it in plastic. That is the best alternative for the environment. Now, he doesn't care which format you buy it in. He just wants to sell his product, right?
Yeah.
So all the indications, the McKinseys, the CEOs, if you take a look at it, people know this. Yeah. But there is this wave of, I'm sorry, I'm going to pick on it, a turtle with a straw in its nose. And by the way, be careful, because a lot of the pictures on the internet are photoshopped with plastic in it when they're actually not there. And there was a big row a while back that somebody had shown one of those turtles with a plastic bag in his mouth and stuff like that. And the originator, the person who made that picture, actually got up in arms because he said, no, that was a picture that I made and people photoshopped the plastic bag in.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. So what is this? Why do you think there's such a push then in the direction against plastics? Is it because there's those people that are pushing that narrative have other interests that would benefit them if you stopped getting plastic and started moving to a slightly, a different format, or the next best alternative for them, for that company or that brand?
Yeah, I think that companies are more or less reasonable. They know what it is, but there are certain environmental groups that believe their own story, and some of them are painful. I remember that the head of Greenpeace, the president of Greenpeace, at one point in time, I think, wrote a paper around Greenpeace wants a part of your green, as in green the dollar. And he walked away from the company because he was getting fed up with the way that things were done to fundraise, that he just could not stand for anymore. They're just twisting the truth in a way that it's good for their organization and growth and stuff like that, but it's not really helping the principles of the environment that he wants. So it's people get up, and as with many people, once you hear it often enough, you start believing it.
Absolutely.
You get in your own little echo room.
I did myself, to be very honest. I'm sitting here telling you, and so that's why it's very refreshing to hear a different side, the other side, that maybe that I and a lot of people probably, don't know about. And I wanted to, one of my clients said something to me, because I was asking him, I'm like, and he's very well known here. We've had him on the podcast as well. He's like, I told him, there's a big push for sustainability now, and it kind of comes back to my earlier question that I'm a bit cynical, or skeptic about, what brands are actually doing. And he said, he's like, Khaled, businesses by their nature, if you want to build a business, it has to be sustainable, like by default for it to, it to work. And when he said that, it was such a of course. So. And now there's such a big push to sustainability, and as we mentioned earlier, there are different types of sustainability. Yeah. What are your thoughts on what he's saying? Does it kind of go against that? There's this big push now for sustainability, but if you take a step back, in order to be more sustainable, your business to start has to be sustainable for you to get to that stage. What are your thoughts about that?
So I assume that you're talking about environmental sustainability here, because there's a lot of different types of sustainability, right? Okay.
Yes.
So I think environmental sustainability, it's here to stay. and not everybody will be at the same stage of development on this. So let me give you an example. If today you go into one of the larger supermarkets, you might go into an entire aisle that is full with bio this, green this, whatever.
For sure.
Yeah. Now, retail shops don't put it there for fun. They do that to sell. So there's a segment of the market that says, I'm going to make that conscious choice. Yeah. About for the environment, and that goes anywhere from people that, let's say, that stay away from meat, to people that say, I want to have buy happy eggs, you know, because they're free-range chickens and they believe that's important. To, you know, the packaging is optimized for the least amount of consumption. Yeah. So I think what companies will do, and what companies will do more and more, they will have two options. They have their regular one, and they'll have their, let's say, their environmental. Sure. And their challenge is, can I get that environmental part to a price point that is about the same? Yeah. Because if I say, listen, for the environment, you can choose between two things: product A and B. Yeah. And product B is the environmentally conscious decision. Let's assume they are. Yeah. But it's 10 times the price. You're not going to buy it.
Of course.
Yeah. If it says, there's a premium of about 5%, then you say, you know what? For those couple of fills, I'm willing to do that.
Sure.
So the trick for businesses is to, I think, in the beginning, to have both options. But my deep belief is that over time, the environmental story will win, both because it will actually typically help also on the cost side, and businesses are driven by cost as well.
Absolutely.
But as these environmental things get better, it becomes cheaper. Just a strange little jump, if you allow me.
Yeah, please.
Brown sugar, white sugar. If today you go into the shop, which one is more expensive, brown sugar or white sugar?
Brown sugar.
Correct. Now, if you think about that, it's really bizarre. Because sugar, when it starts off, in the old days, it was brown. And then they found ways to refine it. And rich families had fine white sugar on the table. Because that was actually a sign of wealth, because you could afford.
Oh, interesting.
That. But by now, the economies of scale on sugar have been so enormous, and the development has been so fantastic that white sugar is cheaper than brown sugar. But it's more refined, but we've gotten better at it. Yeah. I think when a lot of these environmental things, you're going to see the same thing. We're still getting better at it. Solar panels are getting better. Efficiency numbers are getting better. I asked the other day the students here, if you take a Volkswagen Beetle from 1953 and one of today, two questions for you. Which one is heavier, just in weight? Which one would be heavier?
The older one.
The older one, yeah. You're wrong. The current Volkswagen Beetle weighs about twice the weight as the original one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Twice the weight. Okay. Now, but only since 1975, if I take that, because that's a statistic I could find, and as I said, I like data. I like to, or if you take a look at my presentations, they're always footnoted. I don't want to just blur things out. I want to quantify it.
Sure.
The Volkswagen of 1975 compared to today, with the same liter of petrol, drives twice as far. Although the car is twice as heavy. Now, the reason that it's twice as heavy is that it has, what do you call them, the roll bars in it, or the strength in it, airbags in it. There's a lot of safety things. Because of that, the car is heavier, and we want our GPS in it and other stuff, airbags in it. But that's a nice little example, is that what your intuition says, and by the way, I was right where you were, by the way. I would have thought that car was heavier as well. No, it's actually, it's heavier now, but there's much more in it. It's safer, and it's more fuel efficient. So they can go together.
I see.
And come back to the businesses in general will move that way, and I'll go extreme the other direction. Imagine a product that says on the shelf, this is really cheap, but we don't care about the environment.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to take it off the shelf, right? I mean, you just won't.
Yeah.
You just won't.
Yeah.
So that's the. I think it is one of these, like safety, like quality. It's going to be designed in, and if not, somebody will have the similar product than yours that it has designed in, and then the consumer will be swayed to that direction.
Yeah. That I really love the Volkswagen example, because it kind of puts everything we've been talking about so far into perspective. And I was wrong. I thought I thought the old one would be heavier. Just in terms of my technology, I would have thought now the method is lighter. But for example, everything you talked about the safety and the quality, all these things factor in. And what's been really fascinating, Alexander, so far about this conversation is that everything I've kind of thought has been like you've showed me like the other side, and I'm like, that's really interesting because I've never seen I've never seen the other side. And talking about how being more environmentally conscious in the long term is going to be more beneficial to your business because, like you said, businesses are driven by cost, and the thing that is really affecting us or shapes our perception is the consumer behavior. So combining these two, we're going to bring it back a little bit to your time at Mike Dubai. So you mentioned that tech innovations are keys to tackling, this environmental issue. And you guys installed, which is 52,056 solar panels, and now it runs 100% on that. It's fully automated, and it's zero emissions and carbon neutral. So now in every conversation I have to bring up AI because it is the hot topic, and it is the thing that is going to amplify everything, that we've discussed. So where do you see it fitting into this space, and what could be the potential, looking forward, the potential benefits of using AI to become more environmentally conscious?
I think I would pick one word, which is efficiency again.
Efficiency.
It will bring efficiency. And that can range in many different ways. If you think about equipment and machinery, and we are very blessed in this country, by the way. We have a leadership also that kind of looks forward. I'm very happy with this.
Absolutely.
COP28 that it happens here because it brings the environment really in our consciousness.
Yeah.
And step one of everything is, as you certainly know with your background and the other stuff that you do, is be aware.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
So step one, awareness. Once
Yes.
you have awareness, you can start addressing it. So for that, COPE is fantastic. Yes, indeed, my previous company, all automated, because certainly the shareholder was very demanding of taking a step in the future and doing it the right way.
Okay.
So that helped out tremendously.
Absolutely.
Incredible support. So where does technology and AI come in? Today you see that AI is even used, I was reading an article recently by a company that uses AI to optimize and figure out, they called it co-design between people and AI for the new flavors of a drink.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Okay.
So they data mine, and AI, I'm not a specialist, by the way, but they used AI to optimize and to figure out what the key taste was. Then they had people, and they combined those two into making a new flavors. So that is actually in a product. We talked earlier about product design.
Absolutely.
For product design, AI is fantastic. The human brain can only know so many things, and I think we can juggle 5 things at the same time, and then it becomes too difficult for us. AI doesn't care. Yeah. It will optimize a million things if it has to. So pulling all that data, you can get it in product design. You have AI in customer engagement and customer interactions. Nowadays, please press 1 for this, press 2, hopelessly painful.
Oh yes.
But that will develop to where the AI will guide you as a consumer to what you need to have.
Yeah.
It helps in marketing campaigns. One of the challenges in this region is that the population is enormously diverse. Yeah?
That's very true.
If you are in some other countries, you go to a particular country, pick a country in your head, whatever you want. The majority of the population has that nationality,
yes.
culture, religion, whatever it is, and you're done.
Yeah.
Here, you're looking at a color palette of every dimension in the world. So how do you segment? It's too difficult for the human brain to do. AI can help in that.
Okay.
AI in the technical sense. Nowadays, sensors don't cost very much. We know everything has got sensors everywhere. So you can install in machines sensors. And even with some of the suppliers that we had, they actually had a central place where all their machines from around the world, thousands of machines that are installed around the world, these sensors bring it back to the hub.
The headquarters, if you will.
There's an algorithm, an AI that runs through that, and they say, we noticed, now I'm going to make this up, we noticed that in humid environments where the temperature is between 32 and 35, this particular component seems to fail. So they send proactively a message to clients in that environment with these conditions and say, hey guys, this component, preventively replace it. Yeah? Now, if you were just sitting on your own in a factory in a location, you would never know that.
True.
Right? The data itself from all these machines, thousands of machines around the world, who would think to combine, and I'm just picking on humidity and temperature, but you can think of other sensors.
Yeah.
So that's where AI can help. And what does it do? It brings efficiency. Well, because what happens? At that point in time, you won't produce something with a broken machine that you might have to throw out.
True.
So one more example, sir. I live an example yesterday. Yesterday, I walked into one of the major retailers here.
Sure.
And I can't help it. Was in the water business, so I walked to the water aisle.
Sure.
Really boring thing. And my daughter typically, when she sees me do that, she goes, Dad. But I see a guy taking glass bottles off the shelf and putting it in a crate. So I walk up to him and say, what are you doing? Renowned international brand. And he's taking the bottles off the shelf and putting in the bucket. I go like, why are you doing that? He says, well, it's gone past their expiry date.
For water?
For water. Now, there's a couple of stories there because water actually doesn't go bad in glass bottles, but let's leave that as is.
Sure.
And he says, yeah, because the expiry date, is 2 years. Now, jump back to your AI. Here's a shop here in the UAE that returns bottles because it's past the expiry date. Think about the waste. It was bottled, it was cleaned, it was filtered, it was capped, it was labeled. The glass bottle was melted. It was shipped from a European country. Let's not name the brand to the UAE. It's sat on the shelf, for 2 years, capital tied up, and right now there's the fourth moment of truth. What are they going to do with it? Right? That's an enormous waste. Now, if that happens here, I bet you it happens somewhere else as well. Is that brand owner aware of that? Maybe not, because in other places it might have sold perfectly well.
Yeah.
That is the thing where, going back to AI, if AI was aware of that, because everything is clicked in and clicked out and censored in and censored out, they can say, guys, listen, don't put that product there, or do put it there, or move it over there. So you can get these efficiencies out of it. And that's, again, going back to the fundamentals, that will save that company money, or the distributor money.
Exactly. I really like how, first of all, I love how you give so many examples. It's because it really helps me, understand like where you're coming from and the differences in between, both cases. And bringing efficiency into AI, and now that we live, like you said, in a sensor world, in a data world, you have everything is measured, clicked, bought, everything scanned. Putting that much data and giving it to an AI to compile it, to not only make it more efficient for you, but to give you key insights that you might have not known before, could be and will be a game changer, not just, I think in the industry, in the environmental, and from the environmental side and for businesses, but, globally. And that's, I think, where we're shifting.
Yeah, Khaled, you picked up on a very important word there, insight. What AI can do, it replaces data or information with insight.
Exactly.
And it taps into this global pool of data, which has just exploded, right? The amount of data that we have. And that's where it brings insight. And insight gives you that aha moment, and that improves things. My bet is if it improves it, it will reduce waste.
Yeah, absolutely.
And therefore bring efficiencies, and therefore it has an economic driver, and therefore it will drive companies in that direction. It's really a very simple formula if you think about it.
And you know what? And building on what you're talking about, when I think about waste, because I'm obsessed with food. I love cooking. Doesn't mean I'm very good, but I do love cooking. I do love cooking, and so I watch, lots of shows on, YouTube about people, restaurateurs that are Michelin starred and lower end stuff. And I feel like our conversation is the easiest example of that is go look at a restaurant. Because every restaurant ideally is trying to reduce waste and use, for example, when you get a fish, okay, we're going to cut up the fillet, but we can make a stock with the bones. Oh, that head can, add this sauce to it. So they're very resourceful, and it's all about, because building on what you said, that also affects cost. If I can make all of this from this one thing, instead of having to buy, let's say, another fish to continue this process is a game changer.
I can up you one on your fish. I was
Sure.
sitting many years ago. I was sitting in a Korean restaurant, and they were making a beautiful fish, and they filleted it for me. And so they got the bone out, the fish on both sides and the bone, and the fish went on the plate and it disappeared. And he took the bone, he put the bone on the grill, and when he was done, he put it on the plate and he gave it to me.
The bones?
The bone, and I'm going like, and basically it was kind of crisped, but it was like eating a potato chip.
Oh, so just like a
So
crunch.
you actually ate the bone, and I never saw the fish again. I don't know what happened to the fish.
Wow.
But absolutely,
Okay.
restaurant. Let me give you another example about restaurant and food then. Somebody said to me the other day, like, oh, look at that. And they looked at the cucumbers, and they were that plastic wrapped around them. Oh, God, again, plastic. And I'm going like, yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? And they go like, no. I said, yes, think about it. If you ever had a cucumber lay around in your kitchen, yeah, because you were going to use it, but you didn't. 2 days later,
Sure.
what does your cucumber look like?
Shriveled and
Did you use it? No, unless you put it in some kind of shake or stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Putting that very, very thin film around it of plastic that protects it, and that means that the cucumber stays 5 days longer good, or whatever the number of days is good. So you don't have that waste in product. So if you don't have that waste in product, that cucumber, it was put in the ground, it was irrigated, it maybe had some pesticides or whatever we got. It was picked, it was driven with a truck. If you say 10% of the cucumbers go to waste, now I'm going to make this big. I'm going to explode this for you. So a boat of cucumbers arrives from somewhere else into the country. Well, if 10%, that means one boat in every 10 didn't have to sail.
Yeah.
No,
exactly.
think about it.
Yeah.
If you take the 8 biggest boats in the world, these are monsters of boats. These 8 boats put more carbon dioxide in the world, more harmful thing, than all the cars in the entire world.
Wow. Really?
So if you can cut out a cucumber boat, that has an enormous impact. Compared to that little plastic. Now, and if you then take, let's say, you now recycle, and you actually reuse that plastic, because plastic is a hydrocarbon, is perfectly recyclable. Of course you want to wrap it in plastic. It makes absolute total sense.
Yeah. And again, fantastic example. And what I'm really like taking from this conversation, Alexander, is I think what I'm realizing is think deeper, take that extra step, because everything you've told me is brand new information to me. I'm like, everyone else, oh, you told me this, I've been told that 1,000 times, okay, then that's what I now go with. But when you go that level deeper and you really look at the information and the data, and I think a very key thing is the comparisons. You think by throwing away or not using this plastic bottle, I'm doing something good, but you don't know on the other side, for example, maybe the cost or the energy or the expense of making like this glass bottle instead, so having those comparisons is very, important, and to go that level deeper will give you a different answer probably than what you're looking for. And you've mentioned recycling a couple times so far in the conversation, and I wanted to really touch on this because, okay, in your own words, when you say recycling, because there's recyclable, reusable, and there's one more thing I'm not sure about.
Yeah.
What does it mean? When I say, oh, this is recyclable, what does that mean?
Okay, so let me first put a little asterisk on that word already.
Sure.
As soon as people say recyclable, I get slightly worried.
Okay.
I don't care if something is recyclable. I care if something is recycled. Because I can have a product that is perfectly recyclable, but if you dump it in the desert, then that doesn't do any good, right? So
very good point. It's a very good point.
So it is important that products are designed that they can be recyclable. I get that, but the most important part is that it's the last running mile, right? It's the you train for a marathon, you prepare for a marathon, and then 500 meters before the finish you say like, yeah, no, I'm not going to finish.
Yeah.
Well, then it didn't do much, right? That last part is the important part. You need to get to that. Not only does it need to be recyclable, it needs to be recycled.
Gotcha.
Okay, so And we talked earlier about greenwashing. It's a little bit where I'm worried about some products.
That fits into like
because
that thing.
I've seen some people promote products as this is recyclable, and you go, look, average consumer go, oh, this is really good. But yeah, if it's recyclable, but you can't recycle it, then it makes no sense. So recycled, plastic recycled. Some very positive news here, also in the region. During the last year, before we could not use what they call RPET. RPET stands for recycled PET. PET is your plastic bottle.
Okay.
And in some countries already, the
banned,
cola
right?
companies, I used the generic brand name there, they say in Australia or New Zealand or so, they only use RPET, recycled PET bottles. So every bottle is made from recycled bottles. And it's a perfect process. Up to about a year ago, here in the region, we could use it for these clam packs and stuff like that, but not yet for water bottles. Right now, the law has changed, and also right now, it's acceptable. And by the way, it's normal that it took some time, because for the standards of recycled plastic,
Absolutely.
you have to have standards, it needs to be controlled. There's the European standards, there's the American standards, there's different standards, so which one do you do? So the country took its time to define that, which I'm very much a favor of.
Sure.
So now that it's accepted, now the next thing is, the machines are there that can process it, there's no problem. But now you need to get the recycled PET, you need to get the RPET. And that is one of the big challenges here still in the region, and that's why also a COP28 will probably help, brings it into consciousness, that we set up more recycling
facilities.
collection points. Well, the facilities are there. I know of several facilities here that they can perfectly recycle PET. Yeah? Their biggest issue is getting the feedstock. There's people that want to buy it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But they need to get that bottle, that bottle that is standing in your kitchen or in your car, lying in your car. How do you get that bottle back into
that place?
Into that place. And that is where the challenge comes in.
I see. Interesting. Okay.
So, and then, so if you take a look at PET, it is perfectly recyclable. Yeah. In Europe, I believe that the percentages are around 80% right now. Yeah, or maybe even higher, 90%. In the region here, we're around 20% or 23%. It depends a little bit which data you believe. Yeah, so there's an enormous leap forward that we can make, right? If you think about only 1 in 5 bottles, more or less, right now gets recycled. It's perfectly recyclable.
But is it recycled?
And that's, I think, where companies, governments, and people need to work together. One more example. There was a run, a half marathon in Dubai this weekend. Yeah, my former employer put the water, made the water available there. Yeah, and they're working together with companies that collect. And I remember from the time that I was there, up to 85% of the bottles that were distributed there were collected in special bins and got recycled.
Wow.
Yeah, and the other 15%. Yeah. Probably people put it in their pocket and had it on the way back home. So it is possible. It is absolutely, totally possible. But it's a mindset, it's a behavior. As soon as people realize that their waste is not a waste but a resource, that's going to make a huge difference. And we see other countries where it's being done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you said it perfectly. When people see what we thought as waste is becoming now a valuable resource, completely changes your mindset, completely changes, your approach to it. But you also touched on something very important, that to tackle these issues, you do need that unity of people, companies, and government, and because they all need to work together for this to happen. And I was very surprised to hear from you that there is the infrastructure to recycle is there. It's that the supply is not there for these companies or these facilities to do that. And also, very, very interesting point that I didn't consider, the difference. It's funny how words can change everything. Recyclable and recycled. So let me ask you this question. Let me play devil's advocate. Me as a consumer, I'm looking at a product and it's saying, like you said, there's a lot of greenwashing going on, that, we are recyclable. But now that I know this information from you, like myself personally, I'm going to be like, okay, it's recyclable, but are you going to do it? And the question then becomes, can't really find that out, can I?
Okay. So
You know what I mean?
you're spot on now. The first part is bring it into consciousness.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's also why I enjoy doing these kind of chats with people, because today very often the people that scream the loudest are not necessarily the ones that scream the most valuable information. Typically the person that is the quietest is the one that knows the most.
Yeah.
So if you already are conscious of it, that's step number one.
Okay.
And there is in this particular region still infrastructure to be put in place, and they're working on laws right now, and they're looking at the different options. There is producer responsibility, there is taxes that you can put on, you can do deposits, you know, because I bet you if you put a deposit on a bottle, yeah, then all at once they get collected and changed. That also has some disadvantages.
Of course.
So it's not an easy one to do.
Yes, absolutely.
But other places have gone through it, and if you take a look at other countries where there is, and people make sometimes mistakes about it. Let me just pick up on the plastic bag one, for instance. In Sweden, they've just decided, to take away the tax they had on plastic bags because they realized it was better for the environment to use plastic bags. So sometimes also you might make a decision that at the time makes sense, but then later on you need to recalibrate.
Yeah.
I think that in this region right now we are in an influx point, an inflection point, which is really interesting. I think the consumer consciousness is getting built very quickly, also helped by COP28.
Yes.
That's good. Some of the infrastructure is in place. So it's like a bridge. When you build a bridge, you come from two sides, or a tunnel through the mountain. You come from two sides, and you want these two things to meet up.
Yeah.
And it isn't until they really met up that it works.
Yes.
And we're just working towards that right now. I think a lot of people. And I just want to make sure that we build the right bridge, by the way.
Also a very good point. Also a very good point. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that's where the opportunity is. And yes, I think number one, when you take a look at a product, I say first of all, don't blame the cucumber. Because plastic in this particular case is good. Be conscious of where you personally make your choices. I had a person come into my office at one point in time, and he was riding his high horse about the environment and stuff like that. And I looked outside, and I won't mention the car, but let's say it was a V8, typical, fantastic Dubai car, by the way. Get off your high horse, my friend. We make conscious choices. Now, I don't want everybody to drive in the smallest,
of course,
Japanese car possible because it's good for the environment. I know people make choices, and at different places, you make different choices, and that makes
absolutely.
I think it would be very strange if I go to a high-end restaurant and somebody would walk up with a 5-gallon bottle to fill my water glass. I expect a nice bottle of course, because that's part of the experience.
Absolutely.
I get it. So what we need to do is we need to build that consciousness. We need to make sure that we continue to educate. We need to put footnotes and make people conscious about recyclable, recycled. If you can reuse, great reuse. One more crazy example, because people at Alternative to Water, they say these refillable bottles, right?
Yes.
Yeah, no. Let me... the other day, before I did the speech here at the university, I actually looked in my cabinet at home, and I see these reusable bottles.
Okay.
And I actually took them out and put them on the counter, and I counted them. And it was 39 bottles that I had. Since then, I've gotten 2 more. And by the way, I don't collect them. Okay. I get given these things, right? And oh, by the way, I don't have a large family. We're the 2 at home right now, right? But we got 41 of these bottles right now. And it doesn't make any sense because they're steel, they are different things that been melted, and you just, and I get it. There is a good message in reuse your bottle. Absolutely. I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
But that is one of those elements where you just need to, be aware. Because where are those 39 bottles going to end up?
Yeah, just in the landfill, somewhere.
The steel can be recycled, the plastic could be recycled, but you hope that would happen.
Yeah.
So, number 1, build consciousness. Number 2, let's all work towards the right infrastructures to set up that circular economy, what they say.
Exactly, yeah.
Because it is possible. It is possible. And that's where the opportunities will come in. And at the moment that we realize that waste has a value, other than just its caloric value to burn it, because you can do that as well, incinerate, get heat, get the electricity out of it. But use it smarter,
Yeah.
use the resource smart, yeah, that's a good thing to do.
No, absolutely. And I really love what you said about, you know, we're trying to build a bridge, and it's only when those two things meet that you can get that circular economy that, you know, is self-sustaining, you know, it just runs by itself. But also, I love what you said that, but we also have to build the right bridge, the right bridge. Yeah, that's very important too, because that's going to affect, you know, everything, not just now, but, you know, in the future as well. And first of all, I really appreciate how passionate you are about, you know, this space, and, you know, this has been such a like eye-opening experience, you know, for me, and this is why I love having these conversations with people like you, because I love to learn and I love to see, you know, the other side. So I got two questions left for you, Alexander. So I wanted to round off our conversation. We touched on it a little bit already, talking about COP28 that's, you know, happening at the end of this month. And my question to you is, because you've mentioned that bringing COP here, one of the biggest benefits of it is raising awareness and consciousness about the environment. Mm-hmm. And I know Dubai has a 2050 vision, you know, where in being environmentally conscious and sustainability is a big push in that. So from your perspective, what do you see? What is the significance of COP being here in Dubai, and how do you think that's going to play into the 2050 vision that, you know, we're trying to go for?
I'll take them in reverse order. I think one of the things that is unique about Dubai, and some other places are trying to do the same thing, is that it actually works towards a long-term vision. And that's good, because it's your compass north. Right? This is where we're going. And you might deviate a little bit left and right, but ultimately you come back to that north. And in that way, Dubai is a little bit a lighthouse for and a reference point for how to do things. Does everything go perfect in this country or in this city? You know as well. No, of course not.
But there's no it's perfect.
But there are some of these big things that we're getting right. And you see that in some of the ministries, the Ministry of Tolerance, the Ministry of Youth, the Ministry of AI, all these things that have been created. But these are all things where you can see they're looking further than just next week, right? We're not living in the TikTok 6 seconds world of what's flashy right now, but it's what do we want to do? And Dubai's got an enormous brand. Yeah. And, you know, in that way, it can be a thought leader. And where the initial phases, I think, of Dubai was, we copy the best of the world, we put it together. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's actually developing into an area where actually we are running ahead of the pack, and people are beginning to look, oh, what they're doing.
Well, we should do that.
We should do that. There's a country next door that is beginning to do that right now, as you know.
Of course.
So in that way, having a vision, 2050, and then by that time, you know, we get closer, we're going to go to 75, and you know, having that vision and say, how do you, it opens up the mind to people, what is the next best alternative? How do we get there? You know, and people engage in that. So so that is that was the second part of the question that worked toward the vision. I think for the region itself as well, and in general, it is important, because still, I think in general, there is so much tension and stigma that comes with the region.
Absolutely, because we're large oil, we are all oil producers.
We're all producers. It is, you know, the Middle East in general. I don't need to explain that. You see it in the news. There's so much tension and difficult subjects to grapple with. That to actually pick something like COP28 and say that's not all there is, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And there is a fantastic part to the region. There's a fantastic things going on. That is also a benefit of COP. So I see it in different ways. I see it first of all as it's true to the strategy and the vision where we want to go. It sets a wonderful thing. It addresses the environmental, which is not just a local issue, but it's a global issue.
Absolutely.
We in the region, interestingly enough, are running behind on it, on this particular area. So it will bring it into the consciousness, and then there is just the general geopolitical element of it as well. So brilliant move, and I think it's fantastic to see that happen.
Yeah, and no, absolutely. I think you said something very very key. You know, Dubai is very unique in the sense that, You know, I remember here growing up, you know, every time I'd travel, people would hear, oh, Dubai, you guys have the tallest building and so on. That's, you know, that was genius, you know, a genius approach, you know, to get the brand out there. But like you said, now they are running ahead, you know, having these massive global events here, you know, you're on the map, you know, and for those organizations or those events to agree to come here also shows, you know, where Dubai is and the power of the brand and, you know, what we're doing and things like, you know, Museum of the Future. I love what you said about, you know, all these different ministries. They are looking ahead, you know, they have that compass and, you know, all of these built into, you know, having Expo here, you know, and now they have COP28, these massive, massive global events. And particularly this one, you touched on a good point that we are in the region, you know, it's an oil producing region. And all the conversations we're having now is kind of like, okay, how do we shift away from that? Not remove it, but shift away from that, you know, be more environmentally conscious, looking at, you know, solar, looking at all these different things.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think we are, because of that, we are maybe as a consciousness of collectively a little behind on that. But this is definitely, and you see it with brands, how they're, you know, the marketing that they do. And even when you go into a store, you see it's completely changing. Slowly, it does take time, you know, to change the collective consciousness to be more environmentally sustainable. It's not going to happen, you know, overnight. But having these kind of things, by bringing it here, I love what you said, it is the lighthouse. You know, we're showing everyone, guys, okay, everyone come here, we got to sit down, we got to talk about this, all right? There's some things we got to figure out, you know? Yeah. And what I wanted to say, Alexander, first of all, this has been an amazing conversation. I've had so much fun. I've really, really learned so much from you, and I thank you for, you know, educating me and educating our audience. For my last question, this is a question that we ask all our guests, and the message that we're trying to put out, as I mentioned earlier, is success comes in many forms and learning never stops. Now, I know throughout your amazing career, living in so many different places, you've probably learned 20 million things. But I feel, at least when I talk about my life, there was one moment, one learning that I had that changed, you know, everything for me. It completely changed my life. So I know it's a difficult question to answer, so don't get me wrong. But if you had to pick one thing that you would like all of us to take away, what would that be? What would that game changer learning be?
Wow. I think the most important thing probably is be curious. Be curious and optimistic. The human brain is very good at seeing automatically what can go wrong. We are not so good at seeing the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Right? And being interested in people, and I always say people talk to one another, you know, get off your social media. I don't want to sound like an old person, but, you know, talk to people. It's amazing what you can learn, and be curious. There's so much things to learn, and everything builds on what you've learned before. And most learning happens when you fail.
True.
If things go well, you haven't learned anything. And it's not a question about how many times do you fall. It's about, can you get up one more time? And that's where the value comes in. So, you know, set yourself some stretch goals, be optimistic, and be curiously, be in obsessively. And this is the wonderful, when I was a kid, we had an encyclopedia at home. That, for those people, the younger listeners, that's a big book. And right now you got this wonderful internet thing, so you can learn about anything in milliseconds.
Yeah.
You know, be curious.
Yeah.
That's where solutions are found. That's where information, and just don't follow the whoever screams loudest. But if anything, read the footnotes.
Yeah. Make
it data-based. Do it rationally. And really, there's so much opportunity. It's phenomenal. I mean, it's just crazy. It's absolutely wonderful. So, is there one moment? I have a hard time picking one moment.
Yeah.
I can say, you know, your biggest failure is what you learn from most.
The most, yeah.
So that's probably the thing that I would think of first.
Absolutely. First of all, I resonate with everything you said. That's the reason I initially started my own podcast, because I'm very curious and I want to learn. And I've spoken to I've done over 100 episodes now, so I've had of people all over the world and different things. So my brain is just like a sponge. I'm like, oh, this and this and this. But I love what you said. Be curious, because the curiosity will lead you to learning things. That's kind of how it goes. Go a little bit deeper, and I love what you said. Talk to people. I believe, this is my philosophy, I believe people are your biggest teachers. And if you can sit down and have a conversation just like we've had today, it can be a game changer. And for me, I can honestly say, Alexander, that it has. I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a fantastic conversation. I've learned so much. I think, a lot of people listening to this are going to get a big wake-up call, kind of like I had. I hope so.
Good.
That's the hope.
Good.
Alexander, if we want to get in touch with you, people want to reach out to you, what are the best ways we can get there?
Oh, wow. The best thing is I have a website, a company that, the company is called Le Noble, as in the Noble, Le Noble Consulting. There's an email. That's the easiest way probably to reach out to me.
Okay.
And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, Khalid, to be the part of your show. It's maybe future sessions to come, but it's been wonderful to help. Hopefully, a couple of your listeners will go have the same aha moments, and that was the point. Bring it into consciousness.
Bring it into consciousness.
Absolutely fantastic.
Alexander, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, man.
Same here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the AUD podcast channel. We really hope that you enjoyed it and learned something from it. We have a lot of incredible guests lined up for you on the show, and we're so excited to bring you their inspiring stories. To stay up to date with all the latest episode releases, please make sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the podcast on the AUD Instagram page at AUD Dubai.